my fiancé said, "the wedding is off unless you put your house, your car, and even your savings in my name." I calmly said I'd think about it. That night, I changed the locks and donated his wedding suit. He learned everything the next day, when he showed up for his fitting and a stranger was posing in his jacket. "The wedding is off unless you put the condo, the car, and your savings in my name." Samuel said it casually, like he was discussing dinner plans, not demanding I hand over everything I'd spent 10 years building. We were 3 months away from our October wedding. I'd already paid $35,000 in deposits. And the man I was supposed to marry had just turned our future into a hostage negotiation. I looked at him sitting across from me in my home office. My office in my condo that I'd bought 6 years ago without his help, and something inside me went completely cold. "Let me think about it," I said calmly. What I didn't tell him was that I'd already started planning something he'd never see coming. By the time he showed up for his final suit fitting on Monday, a complete stranger would be wearing his $5,000 Tom Ford jacket, and I'd be watching the whole thing unfold from my car across the street. But let me back up. Because understanding how I ended up in that moment requires understanding who I was before Samuel Brennan walked into my life and mistook my success for an opportunity. My name is Lily Morgan. I'm 33 years old and I'm a corporate real estate attorney in Denver. That condo Samuel wanted his name on? I bought it when I was 27 with money I'd saved from 3 years of brutal associate work at a law firm that didn't think women belonged in commercial real estate. The Range Rover he wanted transferred into his name? I paid cash for it at $38,000 I'd saved specifically for that purpose because I didn't want debt, didn't want payments, didn't want anyone to have leverage over something I needed. The savings account he wanted access to? That took a decade to build. 6 figures that represented every vacation I didn't take, every dinner out I skipped, every weekend I worked while my law school friends were living their lives. Every dollar in that account had a story. Every dollar represented a choice I'd made to prioritize security over spontaneity. I learned about financial independence from my mother, though not in the way most people learn things from their parents. I learned it from watching what happens when you don't have it. My mother died when I was 25, right before I passed the bar exam. Ovarian cancer that moved fast and showed no mercy. In those final weeks, when she knew she wasn't leaving that hospital, she grabbed my hand one afternoon and said something I've never forgotten. "Lily, wealth isn't about what you earn. It's about what you keep and what you protect. Don't ever let anyone make you feel guilty for building something solid. And don't ever give someone else control over what you've built." She was talking about my father, though she didn't say his name. He'd left when I was 12, and when he walked out, my mother discovered she had nothing in her own name. No credit cards. No savings account without his name on it. No property she owned independently. At 42 years old, she had to start completely from scratch. She rebuilt herself. Got her real estate license, worked 2 jobs for years, eventually became successful. But she never forgot what those early years of dependence felt like. The vulnerability. The powerlessness. The sick feeling of realizing you'd trusted someone with everything and they'd left you with nothing. So when I bought my condo at 27, I was honoring her. The market had dipped just enough to make it possible, but I emptied my savings and took on a mortgage that terrified me. My colleagues thought I was being reckless. "Rent for a few more years," they said. "Build more cushion." But I could hear my mother's voice in my head and I knew what I had to do. For the next 4 years I lived like a college student in a beautiful space. Cheap furniture from IKEA. No vacations. Cooking at home every night. Driving a 12-year-old Honda Civic I'd bought with cash from my first law firm bonus. Every raise, every bonus check, every tax refund went straight toward that mortgage principal. My best friend Rachel watched this entire process with a mixture of admiration and concern. We'd met in law school, bonded over being 2 of only 7 women in our corporate law program, and stayed close even as our paths diverged. She'd gone into public interest law, made a quarter of what I made, and seemed perfectly happy living with a roommate and 2 cats. "You're 30 years old and you haven't left Colorado in 4 years, she said one Sunday during our usual trail run. "You're missing your life." "I'm building my life," I corrected her. "There's a difference." When I made that final mortgage payment at 31, I sat alone in my condo and cried. Relief tears. Freedom tears. The kind of tears that come when you realize you've actually done something you weren't sure was possible. That condo was mine. Completely, totally mine. Every tile, every window, every square foot belonged to me because I'd earned it. Then I bought the Range Rover. Used 3 years old, but I paid the full $38,000 in cash. Rachel thought I was crazy again. Just finance it. Interest rates are low. But I didn't want payments. I didn't want debt. I wanted to know that if everything fell apart tomorrow, I had a home and a vehicle that no one could touch. By 32, I had that 6-figure savings account and a partnership track at one of Denver's most prestigious commercial real estate firms. I'd negotiated leases for major office buildings. I knew every zoning regulation in Denver County. Senior partners called me for advice. Clients requested me specifically. But I was also lonely in a way I didn't admit to anyone. I'd come home every night to that beautiful empty condo and wonder if I'd made the wrong choices. All my college friends were married or engaged. They posted pictures of vacations and anniversaries and shared lives. I had property and professional respect and financial security. But I didn't have anyone to share it with. That's the state I was in when I met Samuel Brennan 18 months ago at a charity gala for legal aid services. He was 35, charming, working in what he called finance consulting, which I later learned meant he advised startups on funding strategies, though none of his clients ever seemed to actually secure funding. But those first months felt effortless. He'd show up at my office with coffee during late nights. He'd listen when I talked about difficult clients. He seemed genuinely impressed by my career, by what I'd built, by the fact that I owned property at 33. He made me feel like someone finally saw the work behind the success. Rachel was skeptical from the beginning. She'd pull me aside at brunch and say, "There's something performative about him. Watch how he talks about you around other people. It's always about what you have, not who you are." But I was tired of being alone. Tired of being the only single attorney at firm events. Tired of coming home to silence. So I ignored the small warning signs. The way Samuel always steered conversations toward my assets. How he'd casually mention our place or our car, when legally everything was mine. How he never offered to contribute equally to expenses but always had money for expensive clothes and electronics he didn't need. 10 months into dating, he moved into my condo. His lease was ending, the conversation felt natural, and he started contributing $1,500 a month for utilities and groceries. Seemed fair. I owned the place outright, so he shouldn't have to pay what he'd pay in rent elsewhere. But things shifted within weeks. My minimalist aesthetic suddenly became cold and corporate. He started redecorating without asking, bringing home furniture I never wanted, inviting his friends over constantly for poker nights that left beer stains on my coffee table. Then came the comments about my career. How I worked too much. How his buddy's girlfriend was a yoga instructor with better work-life balance. How maybe I should consider estate planning instead of commercial real estate, something less stressful. Each comment felt small in isolation. But together they formed a pattern I was too close to see. 8 months ago I proposed to him. Yes, I got down on one knee at our favorite restaurant and presented a ring that cost 2 months of my salary. He cried, said yes, and immediately started posting photos with captions about being set for life and finding his forever home. Not forever person. Forever home. That should have registered as strange. But I was caught up in wedding planning, throwing myself into it with the same intensity one brought to major cases. My half of the expenses climbed to $35,000. Venue at the Botanic Gardens, photographer, caterer, florist, string quartet. Samuel would occasionally mention costs but never offered to split anything equally, and I told myself it was fine because I earned more. Rachel's skepticism intensified. She'd watch him at dinner parties, notice how he talked about our assets, when everything was legally mine, how conversations always circled back to my condo value or my savings rather than my actual achievements. "He's not in love with you," she said one night after too much wine. "He's in love with what you've built." I didn't want to hear it. I was 3 months away from not being alone anymore. 3 months away from having someone to come home to. 3 months away from finally having what everyone else seemed to have so easily. And then Samuel sat down in my home office and delivered his ultimatum. Transfer the condo. Transfer the car. Give him access to my savings. All of it or the wedding was off. I looked at him across my desk. The desk I'd bought with my first bonus, in the office I'd created in the condo I'd purchased alone, and something crystallized. He didn't want to build a life with me. He wanted to take possession of the life I'd already built. And he was using our wedding, our relationship, our supposed future together as leverage to make it happen. Let me think about it, I said, keeping my voice steady. He stood up, confident he'd won. Don't take too long. We've got vendor deadlines. After he left the room, I sat there for a long time thinking about my mother's words. About what she'd warned me to protect. About the difference between partnership and possession. And I started planning something Samuel would never see coming. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying Samuel's words in my head. Not just the ultimatum itself, but the way he'd delivered it. The casual tone, like he was asking me to pick up groceries. The prepared quality of his speech, like he'd rehearsed it multiple times. The immediate escalation to threats when I didn't agree instantly. This wasn't spontaneous. This was calculated. Sunday morning I met Rachel for our usual trail run at Washington Park. We'd been doing this same route every Sunday for 5 years. 7 miles that took us around the reservoir twice. Usually we talked about work, about cases, about nothing important. Today I unloaded everything before we'd even finished the first mile. Rachel stopped mid-stride, hands on her knees, breathing hard. But it wasn't from exertion. Say that again. He wants what? The condo. Her. Access to my savings. All of it transferred into his name or at minimum joint ownership. 3 months before the wedding. She straightened up and her expression shifted into something I'd rarely seen. Pure anger. Lily, that's not a partnership request. That's a heist with a ceremony attached. He's making it sound reasonable. Like I'm being paranoid for hesitating. Of course he is. Rachel grabbed my shoulders, forcing me to look at her. My sister went through this exact thing 6 years ago. Her ex wanted his name on her car and condo to prove she trusted him. She did it because she loved him and didn't want him to feel like she was holding back. 2 years later, during the divorce, she had to buy him out of assets he never contributed a single cent toward. He walked away with $80,000 of her equity while she struggled to refinance everything back into her own name. I felt something cold settling in my chest. Rachel, I don't know what to do. You call a lawyer. Today. Not a wedding planner, not a therapist. A lawyer who specializes in asset protection. And you don't tell Samuel you're doing it. We finished the run in silence, but my mind was racing the entire time. By the time I got home, Samuel had left for one of his networking coffee meetings that never seemed to result in actual work. I showered, changed, and made a phone call I never thought I'd be making 3 months before my wedding. Monday morning at 9, I called Jonathan Hastings. He was a family law partner at my firm, 62 years old, with a reputation for being brilliant and brutally honest. We'd worked together on a few cases where real estate intersected with divorce proceedings, and I'd always respected his perspective. Lily, this is unexpected, he said when his assistant put me through. What can I do for you? I explained the situation as clinically as possible, keeping emotion out of it, presenting it like a case file. The ultimatum. The timing. The specific assets Samuel wanted access to. The way he'd framed my hesitation as a character flaw. The silence on the other end lasted so long I thought the call had dropped. Jonathan. I'm here. His voice had changed, taken on a weariness that made him sound every one of his 62 years. Lily, I've been practicing family law for 30 years. I've seen this scenario play out more times than I can count, and it never ends well for the person with assets. So what does that mean legally? It means if you transfer these assets before marriage, you're making a gift with zero legal protection. Something happens and you break up, you have no recourse to get them back. After marriage, they become marital property, which means in a divorce they'd be split. Either way, you're massively exposed. I felt my attorney brain kick in, the part of me that could analyze situations without emotion. What about the timing? Does that matter? The timing is the biggest red flag here. Jonathan's voice got firmer. An ultimatum 3 months before a wedding, after you've already paid deposits and made commitments? That's not love talking, Lily. That's strategy. That's someone who knows exactly what they're doing and is using your emotional investment and financial sunk costs as leverage. The words landed like a physical blow. What should I do? Tell him you want to consult a financial planner before making any decisions about asset transfer. Watch his reaction carefully. If he's a legitimate partner who wants what's best for both of you, he'll understand due diligence. If he's not, he'll escalate the pressure and make you feel guilty for being cautious. We talked for another 20 minutes. Jonathan asked detailed questions about Samuel's financial situation, his contributions to household expenses, his work history. With each answer, I could hear the concern growing in Jonathan's voice. "One more thing," he said before we hung up. "Document everything from this point forward. Keep records of conversations, texts, financial contributions. If this goes sideways, you'll need proof of what actually happened versus what he might claim happened." I spent the rest of Monday in a dissociative state I recognized from particularly stressful cases. Physically present, going through motions, but emotionally somewhere else entirely. I showed up to meetings. I reviewed contracts. I responded to emails. But my mind was elsewhere, replaying every interaction with Samuel through this new lens Jonathan had provided. How quickly things had changed after he moved in. How my home had stopped feeling like mine. How every conversation about my work had become criticism disguised as concern. How he'd never once suggested we save together for something, buy something jointly, build something new. Only that I transfer what I already owned. The pattern was forming, clear and undeniable now that I was actually looking at it. Wednesday night we had dinner at home. I'd picked up Thai food on the way back from the office and we ate at my kitchen table. The table I'd bought 3 years ago in the kitchen of the condo I'd owned for 6 years. "I've been thinking about what you said," I started carefully. "About the asset transfers." Samuel looked up, expression immediately guarded. "And I want to talk to a financial advisor first. Make sure we're structuring everything properly for tax purposes, for legal protection. These are major financial decisions and I want to make sure we're doing them right." His face changed. The guardedness shifted to something harder, colder. "You're overthinking this. I'm being cautious with major assets." "That's not overthinking, that's being responsible. People who love each other don't need financial advisors to trust each other." He put down his fork with more force than necessary. "This is exactly what I was worried about. You're treating our marriage like a business transaction. I'm treating major financial decisions like major financial decisions." He stood up from the table abruptly. "You know what this tells me? That you don't actually want to marry me. You want a prenup, a financial advisor, probably separate bank accounts too. That's not a marriage, Lily. That's a business arrangement where you keep all the power and I'm just some accessory to your success." "Samuel, that's not what I'm saying. You're making this complicated because you can't handle the idea of actually sharing your life with someone. You built this fortress of assets and success and you don't actually want to let anyone in. You want a partner you can control, not an equal." He grabbed his keys and wallet. "I'm going to stay at Marcus's place for a few days. Maybe you'll figure out what you actually want. Because right now it's pretty clear you want a wedding more than a marriage." The door closed behind him, not quite a slam but close enough. I sat at that table for a long time after he left, food getting cold, mind cycling through everything he'd just said. The way he'd twisted my reasonable request into a character assassination. How he'd made me feel guilty for wanting to protect assets I'd built before he existed in my life. How quickly he'd escalated from conversation to abandonment. My phone buzzed. A text from Samuel, "Staying at Marcus's tonight. Need space to think about whether we're actually ready for this." Then another, "It hurts that you don't trust me enough to build a real partnership." And another, "I thought you were different. Guess I was wrong." Each message was designed to make me feel guilty, to make me question my judgment, to make me reach out and apologize for having boundaries. I turned off my phone and poured myself a glass of wine. Then I sat in my living room with my furniture in my home, and let myself feel what I'd been avoiding for weeks. This wasn't right. None of this was right. And something was about to happen that would prove just how wrong I'd been about Samuel Brennan. Samuel stayed at Marcus's place for 2 nights. 2 nights of texts designed to make me feel guilty, to make me question my own judgment, to soften me up for when he came back. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I worked late at the office, took on extra research assignments, stayed busy enough that I didn't have time to second-guess myself. Wednesday evening, I came home exhausted from a brutal commercial lease negotiation. 12 straight hours fighting over liability clauses with a client who thought he could rewrite basic contract law through sheer stubbornness. My feet hurt from pacing conference rooms. My head throbbed from staring at contract language. All I wanted was a glass of wine, silence, and maybe a hot bath. Instead, I walked into my condo and found Samuel sprawled on my couch with his college roommate Marcus. Sports blaring on my TV at a volume that made my headache worse. Empty beer bottles accumulating on my coffee table, leaving rings on the wood I'd carefully maintained. Samuel didn't look up when I entered. Didn't acknowledge my presence. Just said, "We're planning bachelor party details. Marcus found a place in Vegas. It's going to be epic." I stood there for a moment, briefcase in hand, professional clothes wrinkled from a long day, waiting for something more. An apology for the fight. An explanation for why he'd let himself back in after storming out. Something. Nothing came. "I'm going to get some wine," I said to no one in particular. I headed toward the kitchen, too tired for confrontation, every muscle aching. The open floor plan I'd loved when I bought this place. The seamless flow between living room and kitchen, the natural light, the way it made the space feel larger, was about to become the design choice that changed everything. Because that's when I heard Marcus's voice, carrying clearly from the living room. "Have you told her about the Vegas budget yet? That's going to be expensive as hell." I froze just inside the kitchen, hidden from view by the angle of the wall. Wine glass in hand, completely still. Samuel's laugh came next. Not the laugh he used with me, soft, almost self-deprecating. This was different. Darker. More calculating. "Not yet. She'll cover it. She always does." My hand tightened on the wine glass. "Marcus, dude, you've got her trained. My girlfriend would absolutely murder me if I pulled that." "That's because your girlfriend doesn't have a paid-off condo in Cherry Creek and $100,000 in liquid savings." Samuel's voice was casual, like he was discussing sports scores. "Lily's good for it. He works constantly anyway. Might as well benefit from it." The wine glass felt impossibly heavy in my hand. I set it down on the counter silently, carefully, every movement deliberate. My attorney brain kicked in. The part of me that knew evidence when I heard it, that understood the value of listening before reacting. Marcus's voice dropped lower, conspiratorial. "And the asset transfer thing? Bro, that's brilliant. Once your name's on that condo and the car, you've got real security. Even if things go sideways down the line, you walk away with something substantial. That's thinking ahead." "I know." Samuel sounded pleased with himself. "My dad suggested it, actually." Everything inside me went cold. "Your dad told you to do this?" "Yeah. He went through a messy divorce in his 30s and his ex-wife's name wasn't on anything. He got some alimony, but that was it. He walked away broke, starting from scratch at 40. He told me, never marry someone with assets without protecting yourself first. If she turns out to be difficult or controlling, you're not starting from zero. It's just smart planning." I heard the clink of beer bottles, the sound of them toasting to something. Then Samuel added the part that made my blood turn to ice. "Plus, once I have access to her savings account, I can finally launch that cryptocurrency fund I've been planning. She won't even notice if I move 50 grand into the initial investment. By the time we're married and she figures it out, it'll have doubled, hopefully tripled, and I'll be the one with the empire. She'll probably be proud of me for taking initiative." Marcus laughed, loud and genuine. "That's cold, man. But I respect the hustle. And you're right, she works like 80 hours a week. Probably won't even notice the money's gone until you've already made it back. Maybe you'll make enough to pay her back and keep the profits. That's the plan. She's so busy with her commercial real estate cases, she barely looks at her personal accounts. I've watched her. She checks her balance maybe once a month. By the time she realizes 50,000 is missing, I'll be able to explain it as an investment in our future." I stood in my kitchen in my condo that I'd bought with my money, listening to my fiancé and his friend plot my financial destruction with the casual ease of people planning a vacation. They kept talking. About the Vegas trip. About how expensive bottle service was going to be. About whether they should get a suite or just regular rooms. But I'd stopped listening to the words. I was processing what I'd just heard. Samuel hadn't just asked for asset transfers on a whim. His father had coached him. Had given him a strategy based on his own divorce experience. This was premeditated. Calculated. A plan that had been forming since before Samuel even moved into my condo. And the cryptocurrency scheme, he'd already decided to steal $50,000 from my savings. Not borrow. Not ask permission for. Phil. He'd been watching my banking habits, timing his access request for when he could drain my account without immediate detection. The word difficult kept echoing in my head. His father had warned him I might turn out to be difficult or controlling. which apparently meant objecting to financial exploitation. Standing up for myself. Protecting what I'd built. I forced myself to move. Walked back through the living room like I'd heard nothing. Both of them looked up briefly, then went back to their conversation about Vegas hotels. Samuel gave me a smile that would have seemed warm if I hadn't just heard what I'd heard. Long day? He asked, almost concerned. Brutal, I managed. I'm going to take a shower. I went to my bedroom in my condo, and closed the door. Sat on the edge of my bed feeling like someone had just handed me architectural plans for my own destruction. He'd drawn it all out. The asset transfer to secure his position. The savings drain for his cryptocurrency dreams. The entire blueprint of how Samuel Brennan planned to dismantle everything Lily Morgan had built. But he'd made one critical mistake. He'd planned this entire scheme while living in the home of a corporate attorney who'd spent 10 years learning how to protect assets, identify fraud, and document evidence. I walked into my bathroom, turned the shower as hot as it would go, and let the scalding water run over me until my skin turned red. Let it burn away the last remnants of doubt, the final threads of hope that maybe I'd misunderstood, maybe there was another explanation. There wasn't another explanation. There was only the truth I'd overheard in my own living room. Samuel wasn't building a life with me. He was systematically planning to strip everything I'd worked for, piece by piece. First the asset transfer, getting his name on property he'd never contributed to. Then the savings drain, $50,000 stolen for gambling on cryptocurrency, something I'd never agree to if asked. His father had literally coached him on how to protect himself from me being difficult. Which meant his father had taught him how to exploit someone who'd worked hard and built something real. Had given him the playbook for financial abuse disguised as partnership. And Samuel had already decided I was too busy, too distracted, too focused on work to notice money disappearing from my own accounts. That I was an easy mark because I'd chosen career over constant vigilance. I turned off the shower and wrapped myself in a towel I'd bought with my own money in the bathroom of the condo I'd purchased alone, before Samuel Brennan ever existed in my life. The woman looking back at me in the mirror was someone I recognized. Not the version who'd been doubting herself for the past week. Not the version who'd felt guilty for wanting to protect her assets. But the version who'd worked 80-hour weeks and sacrificed everything to build something that mattered. That woman knew exactly what to do. If Samuel wanted to play strategic games with my life's work, I'd play too. But this game would have rules he didn't know existed. This game would have only one winner. And it sure as hell wasn't going to be him. I got dressed, dried my hair, and started making phone calls. First to Jonathan Hastings, leaving a voicemail about needing to discuss something urgent. Then to my building manager about lock changes. Then to Rachel, just 3 words. You were right. By the time I walked back out of my bedroom composed and calm, I'd already started building my counterattack. Samuel looked up from the couch, beer in hand. Feeling better? Much better, I said. And I meant it. Samuel and Marcus left around midnight, both of them loud and drunk and completely oblivious to the fact that I'd heard every word of their conversation. After they stumbled out, I stood in my living room looking at the beer bottles they'd left behind, the rings on my coffee table, the mess they'd made of my space. Then I cleaned it all up. Methodically. Completely. Wiped down every surface, threw away every bottle, restored my home to exactly how it had been before they'd invaded it. It felt symbolic somehow. Taking back my space. Erasing evidence of their presence. Thursday morning I was at my desk by 7. I had Jonathan Hastings on the phone by 8. I overheard something last night, I said without preamble. Samuel and his friend Marcus. They were in my living room planning his bachelor party, and I heard the entire conversation from the kitchen. I told him everything. Word for word, as close as I could remember. The Vegas expenses Samuel expected me to cover. The asset transfer being his father's idea, a strategy developed from his dad's divorce experience. The cryptocurrency scheme, $50,000 Samuel planned to steal from my savings the moment he had access. The silence on Jonathan's end lasted so long I checked my phone to make sure the call hadn't dropped. Jonathan. I'm here. His voice had changed completely. Lily, you need to protect everything. Today. Not tomorrow, not next week. Today. What do I need to do? Change every password on every account. Bank accounts, investment accounts, credit cards, everything. Change every security question. If he has visibility into any accounts, even just knowing the login information, remove his access immediately. Then change your locks. All of them. Entrance, deadbolts, garage access, every single lock in that condo. My pen was moving across paper, taking notes the way I'd been trained in law school. What about documentation? Write down everything you remember from that conversation while it's fresh. Exact quotes if possible, close paraphrases if not. Note the time, the location, who was present. Create a spreadsheet of what you owned before Samuel versus what you purchased together. I'm guessing that's going to be heavily weighted toward your assets. Take photographs of every room showing your property. Back everything up to encrypted cloud storage and send copies to me and to someone you trust completely. Rachel. Perfect. Do all of this today. If this escalates to legal action, and I think it might based on what you've told me, you'll need proof this was calculated fraud, not just a relationship dispute. I was already opening my laptop, pulling up my banking website. The locks are going to be expensive. I don't care if they cost $5,000. Change them today. He has keys to your condo and he's planning to drain your savings. You cannot let him have physical access to your space while you're protecting your accounts. By 9, I'd changed every password on every financial account I had. By 10, I'd updated all security questions to answers Samuel would never guess. Replacing my mother's maiden name with obscure references only I would know. Changing my first pet's name to a randomly generated phrase. Creating layers of security that would take a determined hacker to break through. At 11, I called my building's property manager. A woman named Patricia who'd always been efficient and professional. Patricia, I need to change all the locks in my unit. Today if possible, tomorrow at the latest. Oh. Pause. Is everything okay, Lily? I'm ending my engagement. My fiancé has keys and I need them to stop working immediately. Her voice shifted, became warmer. I understand completely. Let me call our locksmith. With the smart lock system you have, it's going to run about $1,200 for everything. Entrance, deadbolt, garage access codes. That's fine. Can they do it tomorrow? I'll make it a priority. Will you be home? No, but I'll give you authorization to let them in. Just please make sure it happens before end of day Friday. Consider it done. And Lily? I'm sorry you're going through this. After I hung up, I opened a new spreadsheet and started documenting everything. One column for items I'd owned before Samuel moved in. Another for items we'd purchased together. The condo, 100% mine, purchased 6 years ago, mortgage paid off 2 years ago. The Range Rover, 100% mine, purchased 3 years ago with cash. Furniture, approximately 95% mine, accumulated over 6 years. Joint purchases, one high-end coffee maker, approximately $400. A set of cookware I never used, around $300. Decorative pillows for the couch, maybe $200. A smart TV he'd insisted we needed, $600. Total joint purchases, $1,500 out of an estimated $250,000 in assets within the condo. I created another spreadsheet tracking Samuel's financial contributions since he moved in. $1,500 monthly for 10 months, $15,000 total. Utilities, groceries, nothing toward the mortgage that no longer existed, nothing toward property taxes or HOA fees, nothing toward the actual ownership of anything. Then I went room by room with my phone, photographing everything. Every angle of every room. The furniture, the art, the appliances, the flooring, the fixtures. Creating a visual record of what existed in my space before I removed Samuel from it. I encrypted everything and uploaded it to a secure cloud service. Then I sent copies to Jonathan and Rachel with a simple subject line: documentation. Rachel called immediately. What am I looking at? Evidence. In case Samuel tries to claim he contributed to any of my assets or has rights to anything in the condo. You're really doing this. I'm really doing this. Good. Her voice was fierce. He deserves everything that's coming to him. Friday afternoon, while Samuel was supposedly at work, coffee meetings that never resulted in actual employment, I made a call that felt both petty and absolutely justified. I called Douglas, the owner of the men's boutique in Larimer Square where Samuel's custom wedding suit was being held. We'd had several conversations over the past few months as Samuel went through multiple fittings, changing details, obsessing over the burgundy lining, the monogrammed cufflinks, the way the charcoal fabric draped. I'd paid for all of it. $5,000 for a suit he'd wear once. Douglas, this is Lily Morgan. We need to talk about Samuel Brennan's wedding suit. Of course. His final fitting is scheduled for Monday afternoon. Is there a problem? The wedding's off. We broke up. I'd like to donate the suit. Silence. Then, I'm sorry, donate it? You partner with a veterans charity, correct? Veterans Career Closet. Yes, we do, but this is a $5,000 custom Tom Ford suit that I paid for. Every cent. Samuel's been living rent-free in my condo for 10 months while I've covered all wedding expenses. I want that suit donated to a veteran who actually needs it. Someone who will wear it with honor to job interviews instead of using it as a costume for a fraudulent wedding. Douglas was quiet for a long moment. If you paid for it, then legally it's yours to donate. But are you certain? This is quite an expensive gesture. I'm completely certain. He has a final fitting scheduled for Monday afternoon. I want the suit gone before he arrives. Can someone from the charity pick it up tomorrow? I can arrange that. But Lily, he's going to be very upset when he shows up and discovers the suit is gone. That's the point. And Douglas, when he does show up, just tell him there was a miscommunication and his suit was donated. Don't mention my involvement unless he asks directly. This feels like there's quite a story here. There is. And it ends with a deserving veteran getting a beautiful suit instead of a con artist wearing it to a wedding that was always about accessing my assets. Saturday morning, I woke up with absolute clarity about what needed to happen next. I drove to the Botanic Gardens where we'd booked our ceremony space. Jennifer, our coordinator, looked concerned the moment I walked in alone. Lily, is Samuel meeting you here? No. I need to cancel the wedding. Her expression shifted to professional sympathy. I'm so sorry. Let me pull up your contract. She typed on her computer for a moment. The deposit is non-refundable, and canceling within 90 days means we retain 60% of the remaining balance. Total would be about $14,000. I pulled out my checkbook without hesitation. I'd like to pay that now. For the next 2 hours, I systematically canceled every wedding vendor. The photographer, $2,000 lost. The caterer, $3,500 gone. The florist, $1,800. The string quartet, $1,200. Each cancellation felt like cutting a cord that had been strangling me. By noon, I'd spent $23,000 canceling a wedding to a man who'd planned to steal $50,000 from my savings. Still cheaper than what he'd intended. As I was finishing paperwork with Jennifer, she mentioned something that stopped me cold. By the way, a young couple inquired about your October date last week. Both elementary school teachers. They absolutely loved the garden space, but when I quoted them the price, they said it was beyond their budget. The bride actually cried. It was heartbreaking. Something shifted in my chest. What would make it affordable for them? Jennifer calculated quickly. If someone covered about $8,000 of the venue cost, they could probably manage the rest with their savings. My hand was shaking slightly as I wrote another check. Apply this to their booking. Anonymous donor. Tell them someone wanted them to have a beautiful wedding day. Jennifer's eyes filled with tears. You're going through a breakup and you're paying for complete strangers to get married? I'm paying for good people to have something beautiful. Samuel was going to use my money to fund cryptocurrency gambling. This feels infinitely better. Sunday morning, I packed all of Samuel's belongings. Every piece of clothing still hanging in my closet. Every expensive electronic device scattered throughout my space. His cryptocurrency magazines that now felt like evidence. His motivational business books about manifesting wealth and attracting abundance. Every physical trace of him. I labeled each box clearly and stacked them in my assigned parking space in the garage. Then I sat down at my kitchen table and drafted a text message. I wrote it 17 different times before I got the words exactly right. Samuel, I've thought carefully about your proposal regarding asset transfer. You're right, we need to be on the same page about this marriage. I've realized we have fundamentally different definitions of partnership. You see assets to acquire and exploit. I see a life's work to protect. I've canceled the wedding and all vendors. Your belongings are boxed in parking space 23. I've changed all locks and access codes. Collect your things by Monday noon, after which everything will be donated. I wish you clarity about what partnership actually means. I read it one final time. Then I hit send, powered off my phone completely and called Rachel. Pack a bag. We're going to Breckenridge for the weekend. Right now. Right now. We stayed in a small cabin in the mountains. Hiked trails where the aspen trees were just starting to turn gold. Drank wine by a fireplace. Talked about everything except Samuel. Rachel kept watching me with concern. You're weirdly calm about this. I'm not calm, I said. I'm free. There's a difference. Sunday evening, Rachel and I drove back from Breckenridge as the sun was setting behind the mountains. The entire weekend my phone had been off. Powered down completely. For 48 hours, I'd existed in a space where Samuel Brennan and his schemes didn't exist. Now, sitting in Rachel's car as we pulled into Denver, I held the phone in my hand, finger hovering over the power button. You don't have to turn it on yet, Rachel said quietly. I do. I need to see how bad it is. I pressed the button and watched the screen light up. It took a full 30 seconds for all the notifications to load. 87 missed calls. 62 text messages. 15 voicemails. Jesus, Rachel breathed, glancing at my screen. He completely lost it. I started reading through the texts, watching Samuel's mental state deteriorate in real time through his messages. They'd started arriving within an hour of my text on Sunday morning. First came confusion. What are you talking about? Is this a joke? Call me immediately. Then more urgent confusion. Lily, I just tried my key and it doesn't work. What's going on? Call me now. Then panic. I went to the garage and all my stuff is in boxes. Please tell me this is some kind of test. Please call me. We need to talk. Then anger started bleeding through. You can't just cancel our wedding without discussing it. We paid deposits together. This is insane. We hadn't paid deposits together. I'd paid every single one. The messages continued, timestamps showing he'd been texting every 20 to 30 minutes for hours. Everyone's asking me what happened. What am I supposed to tell them? That you went crazy. You're making the biggest mistake of your life. We're supposed to be partners. I can't believe you're doing this over text. After everything we've been through. Then the rage fully emerged. You know what? Everyone's going to know what kind of person you really are. Controlling. Incapable of trust. You're going to die alone in that condo you care about more than actual human beings. I gave up everything for you. Moved into your place. Dealt with your insane work hours. Put up with your controlling behavior. And this is how you repay me. Rachel was reading over my shoulder. Put up with your controlling behavior? Is he serious? Keep reading, I said. It gets worse. The bargaining phase started around midnight Sunday. Lily, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said those things. Please let's just talk. Face to face. We can work through this. Forget the asset thing. Let's just talk about a prenup instead. Would that make you feel better? I'll sign whatever you want. Please don't throw away what we have over money. I love you, not your condo or your car. Please just call me. Then his father's voicemail, which Rachel insisted on listening to after I described it. I put it on speaker. His father's voice was cold, controlled rage. Ms. Morgan, this is Richard Brennan, Samuel's father. What you're doing is not only cruel, it's financial abuse. You manipulated my son, made him financially dependent on you, and now you're publicly abandoning him to humiliate him. You will fix this situation immediately, or you will face serious consequences. Legal consequences. I promise you that. Rachel's mouth fell open. His father literally coached him to steal your assets, and now you're the financial abuser? Projection is a hell of a thing. There were texts from Marcus too. You're a cold bitch for doing this over text. Samuel deserves better than a corporate shark with no heart. And from numbers I didn't recognize, Samuel's friends probably. I don't know what Samuel did, but you didn't have to humiliate him like this. Canceling a wedding 3 months out? That's brutal. I hope you're happy with yourself. I scrolled through them all, feeling nothing. No guilt, no second thoughts, no desire to respond or explain. Just a distant curiosity about how someone could be so completely delusional about their own behavior. Are you going to respond? Rachel asked. No. There's nothing to say. He knows what he did. His father knows what they planned. Responding would just give him an opening to manipulate me again. Monday morning I did something I'd been planning since Friday. Something that felt petty and perfect and absolutely necessary for my own sense of closure. I called in sick to work. The first sick day I'd taken in over a year. Then I drove to Larimer Square, parked across the street from Douglas's boutique and waited. Large coffee in hand. Sunglasses on despite the overcast Denver weather. Car positioned with a perfect view of the entrance. Samuel's final fitting was scheduled for 2 o'clock. I watched people walk past the boutique. Watched Douglas help other customers. Watched the normal rhythm of a Monday afternoon in downtown Denver. At exactly 2 o'clock, Samuel's Honda Civic pulled up to a parking meter in front of the shop. I sat up straighter, coffee halfway to my lips. He got out of the car with that confident stride I used to find attractive. Shoulders back, chin up, like he was about to do something important. He was probably planning to use this fitting as a sympathy story later. My crazy ex canceled our wedding, but at least I'll look good in this suit eventually when I find someone better. He walked into the boutique. I checked my watch. 2:03. At 2:06, the door burst open and Samuel came storming out, phone already at his ear, face dark red with rage. Even from across the street with my windows up, I could hear him screaming, "What do you mean donated?" He was pacing the sidewalk, gestures wild, completely unraveling in public. People walking past were staring. I don't care who technically paid for it. That's my suit. My wedding suit. More pacing, more screaming into his phone. Get it back right now or I'm calling the police. This is theft. I took a sip of my coffee watching the show. Then something happened I hadn't anticipated, something that made the entire situation absolutely perfect. A man walked out of the boutique behind Samuel. Late 40s, military posture, close-cropped hair going gray at the temples. And he was wearing the suit. Samuel's suit. The charcoal Tom Ford with the burgundy lining. The man stopped in front of Douglas's shop window, looking at his reflection with an expression I recognized. The kind of wonder that comes from seeing yourself as someone you'd forgotten you could be. He touched the lapels of the jacket gently, like he was afraid it might disappear. Turned slightly to see the fit from different angles. Stood taller, shoulders back, chin up. The suit transformed him. Douglas came out of the shop, walked over to the man, shook his hand warmly. Said something I couldn't hear that made the man smile. A real smile, genuine and grateful. That's when Samuel turned around and saw him. I watched his face go through the most remarkable transformation. Confusion first. Why is someone wearing a suit that looks exactly like mine? Then recognition, that is my suit. Then pure, incandescent rage. That's my suit, he screamed across the sidewalk. Several people stopped walking. A couple pulled out their phones, probably thinking they were about to witness a fight. Douglas stepped between Samuel and the veteran immediately, one hand up in a calming gesture. I couldn't hear everything but I caught fragments. Douglas's voice was calm, professional, completely in control. This suit was donated by the person who purchased it. Samuel's voice getting louder. I don't care about his interview. That's my wedding suit. Mine. The veteran, I caught Douglas saying Mr. Patterson, looked uncomfortable, started to say something. Douglas cut him off firmly. You absolutely will not give it back. The suit is yours. Earned and deserved. My phone started ringing. I looked down and saw Samuel's name on the screen. Looked back up and watched him across the street, phone pressed to his ear, staring at the boutique entrance like I might materialize if he willed it hard enough. I declined the call. Watched him look at his phone in disbelief, then dial again. Declined it again. He tried a third time. Then a fourth. Each time I watched his movements become more agitated, more frantic. Finally, he screamed at no one in particular. You can't do this. I'll see. That suit cost $5,000. Douglas raised one eyebrow. I could see it clearly from across the street. That perfect expression of devastating calm. You're welcome to pursue legal action. However, Ms. Morgan provided extensive documentation proving she paid for the entire ensemble. You'll be suing the person who purchased it for donating their own property. I encourage you to consult an attorney about the likely outcome. The small crowd that had gathered was watching with open interest now. Someone was definitely filming. Samuel stood there, face red, fists clenched at his sides, looking between Douglas, Mr. Patterson in his suit and the people staring at him. Then he turned and stormed back to his Honda Civic. The 15-year-old car he'd been driving when we met, that had sat mostly unused in my garage for 10 months while he drove my Range Rover everywhere. He got in, slammed the door and peeled out of the parking spot so aggressively his tires squealed against the pavement. I watched him disappear down the street, then looked back at the boutique. Mr. Patterson was going back inside with Douglas, both of them talking, the veteran still touching the jacket like he couldn't quite believe it was real. I finished my coffee, started my car and drove home. The best part wasn't Samuel's public humiliation, though I'd be lying if I said that didn't feel satisfying. The best part was knowing that right now a good man was wearing that $5,000 suit. A man who would wear it with honor to a job interview, who would use it to rebuild his life, who deserved it infinitely more than Samuel ever had. Sometimes revenge isn't about destruction. Sometimes it's about making sure something beautiful ends up in the right hands. When I got back to my condo that afternoon, I felt lighter than I had in months. Watching Samuel unravel on that sidewalk, watching Mr. Patterson walk away in that suit with dignity and hope. It had been the closure I needed. But Samuel wasn't done. Not even close. By Tuesday morning my phone was filling up with a different kind of message. Not from Samuel but from mutual acquaintances, people from my building, even a few distant colleagues. The smear campaign had begun. Samuel's social media had transformed overnight into a performance of heartbreak. Cryptic posts appeared every few hours. Sometimes you discover someone's true colors when you ask them to treat you as an equal partner. Narcissists weaponize their success to control and discard people who genuinely love them. Financial abuse is real, and it's not always the man doing it to the woman. Each post got dozens of sympathetic comments. His friends piled on, adding their own observations about how I'd always seemed cold and never really fit with Samuel's warm energy. One of his college friends posted, "I always thought there was something off about her. Too focused on money, not enough on the relationship." Another, "Samuel dodged a bullet. Anyone who cancels a wedding over asset protection doesn't understand what marriage means." The narrative was carefully constructed and it was spreading. I was the controlling corporate shark who'd manipulated Samuel emotionally, made him financially dependent, then cruelly discarded him when he'd asked for basic respect and partnership. I'd stolen his wedding suit out of spite. I'd cancelled everything without discussion, proving my domineering nature. People I barely knew started calling. Mrs. Chin from my building's social committee. "Lily, I heard what happened with your engagement. I'm disappointed in how you handled it. That poor man seemed so devoted to you." A paralegal from another firm. "Is it true you kicked Samuel out and donated his belongings without even talking to him?" Even my dry cleaner making awkward small talk. "I heard about your breakup. Seems like it got messy." I didn't defend myself to any of them. What was I supposed to say? Actually, he was planning to steal $50,000 from my savings? They wouldn't believe me. Samuel's version was already set in their minds. Rachel was furious. "You need to tell people what actually happened. He's destroying your reputation." "Let him," I said. "The people who matter will figure it out. And the people who don't matter? Don't matter." But Rachel was right about one thing. The story was spreading through Denver's professional community faster than I'd anticipated. By Wednesday, I'd gotten 3 uncomfortable conversations at work from people who'd heard something and wanted to know if I was okay. That's when Margaret Keating stepped in. Margaret was our senior partner, 68 years old. With silver hair she wore in a sharp bob and a reputation for absolutely destroying opposing counsel in depositions. She'd been practicing family law for 4 decades, and she had exactly 0 patience for financial manipulation in relationships. Thursday afternoon she appeared in my office doorway. "Close your door," she said. I did. "I've been hearing things," Margaret said, settling into the chair across from my desk. "About you and your ex-fiancé. About how you supposedly abused him financially and stole his wedding suit." My stomach dropped. "Margaret, She held up one hand. "I'm not asking you to defend yourself. I'm telling you that I've already started correcting the record." "What?" "Last night at a bar association mixer, someone brought up your situation. Tried to paint you as some kind of monster. So I told them the truth." Margaret's expression was steel. "That Samuel Brennan tried to manipulate you into transferring your condo, car and 6-figure savings before marriage. That you overheard him planning to steal $50,000 for a cryptocurrency scheme. That you protected your assets and ended the engagement. That the suit donation was because you paid for it entirely while he lived rent-free for 10 months. I stared at her. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. I've spent 40 years watching women get financially exploited in marriages and divorces. I've seen it play out 100 different ways, and it always starts like this. With a man who sees a successful woman as an opportunity rather than a partner. She leaned forward. You did exactly the right thing, Lily. And I'm not going to sit quietly while some con artist and his enabling father try to destroy your reputation for protecting what you built. My throat felt tight. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just know that the story is shifting. People are starting to ask questions. And Samuel's version is falling apart under basic scrutiny. He was right. By the end of the week, people who'd initially been sympathetic to Samuel were calling to apologize. I'm so sorry, Lily. I didn't have the full story. I should have asked you directly instead of believing gossip. What he tried to do, that's horrible. I'm glad you got out. But the most unexpected call came 2 weeks after the boutique incident. My phone rang with a number I recognized. Marcus, Samuel's college roommate. The one who'd been in my living room discussing the asset transfer scheme. I almost didn't answer. But curiosity won. Lily, this is Marcus. Samuel's friend. Can we talk? Can I buy you coffee? Every instinct told me to decline. But something in his voice made me pause. Why? Because I need to apologize. And I need to tell you something about what's happening. We met at a coffee shop in Capitol Hill, neutral territory. Marcus looked uncomfortable the moment he sat down, like he was about to confess something he'd been carrying for too long. I need to apologize, he started. For my part in encouraging Samuel. For being in your living room that night talking about his plans like it was all some game. I stayed quiet, letting him continue. Samuel's telling everyone you're a monster. That you financially abused him, controlled him, humiliated him. But I was there. I heard him talking about the asset transfer plan, the cryptocurrency fund his dad's coaching. I know what he was actually planning to do. So why are you here? Marcus ran his hand through his hair, looking genuinely distressed. Because I've seen him do this before. In college he had a girlfriend named Ashley. Convinced her to co-sign a business loan for some startup he wanted to launch. He trusted him completely. He defaulted on the loan within 6 months and destroyed her credit score. She spent years rebuilding financially, couldn't get approved for an apartment lease, had to move back in with her parents. My chest tightened. And you knew about this? I knew. I thought it was just a stupid mistake he made when he was young. But then watching what he tried to do to you, how he's lying about everything now, painting himself as the victim, I realized he was just running a more sophisticated version of the same scheme. He didn't change. He just got better at it. Why tell me this now? Because his dad found a lawyer. They're planning to sue you for the wedding suit and emotional distress. They're going to claim you stole his property and publicly humiliated him. And I can't stay silent about that. Marcus pulled out his phone, showed me a text thread with Samuel from 2 weeks ago, before the boutique incident. Samuel bragging about the crypto fund he was going to launch with Lily's money, about how she'd never notice 50 grand missing, about how once his name was on her assets he'd have real security. I'm willing to testify, Marcus said. If it goes to court. About what I heard him say, what his actual plans were. It's the least I can do. I took photos of the text thread with my own phone. Thank you. This helps. I'm sorry I didn't say something sooner. I should have warned you before it got this far. After Marcus left, I sat in that coffee shop for a long time thinking about Ashley. About how many other women there might have been. About patterns of behavior that don't change, just evolve. Then I called Jonathan Hastings. We might have a lawsuit coming, I told him. But we also have a witness willing to testify about what Samuel was actually planning. Good. Let me handle this. Within 48 hours, Jonathan had drafted a legal letter that was essentially a surgical strike. 8 pages outlining exactly what discovery would reveal if Samuel proceeded with litigation. Documented evidence of his plan to drain my savings for unauthorized cryptocurrency investment. Testimony from multiple witnesses about the asset transfer scheme being premeditated. Proof that I'd paid for all wedding expenses including the disputed suit. Bank records showing Samuel's minimal contributions to household expenses. A proposed countersuit for attempted financial fraud and coercion. The letter's conclusion was devastating. Should your client proceed with litigation, Please be advised that Ms. Morgan is a corporate real estate attorney with extensive trial experience and unlimited access to expert witnesses regarding financial manipulation in intimate relationships. Discovery will be invasive, thorough, and costly for your client. We encourage you to advise Mr. Brennan accordingly. Jonathan sent it on a Tuesday. By Friday, Samuel's attorney had withdrawn from the case. Samuel's father called me directly one last time. His voice was tight with barely controlled rage. You think you've won. You think destroying my son's reputation makes you powerful. But everyone will eventually see what you really are. Kept my voice level. Everyone already sees what your son really is. That's precisely the problem. You coached him to exploit me and now you're angry it didn't work. You have no idea what you're talking about. I have recordings of your son discussing the exact strategy you taught him. I have witnesses. I have documentation. If you contact me again, I'll add harassment to the countersuit. Are we clear? Silence. Then the call ended. I blocked both their numbers and never heard from either of them again. The lawsuit threat evaporated completely. And slowly my life started returning to something resembling normal. Except it wasn't the same normal. It was better. Because I'd learned something Samuel and his father never expected me to learn. That protecting yourself isn't selfish. And that sometimes the people who call you cold are just angry you won't let them rob you blind. The weeks after blocking Samuel and his father were strange. Not difficult exactly. Just strange. Like adjusting to silence after living next to construction noise for months. I threw myself into work with the same intensity I'd always had, but now it felt different. Lighter. I wasn't coming home to someone who resented my success. Wasn't defending my career choices. Wasn't monitoring my bank accounts for unauthorized transfers. My condo felt like mine again. I rearranged furniture back to where I'd originally had it. Donated the expensive pieces Samuel had brought in. Replaced the cryptocurrency magazines on my coffee table with books I'd been meaning to read for years. Rachel came over one Friday night with wine and takeout. You seem different, she said, settling onto my couch. Different how? Lighter. Like you've been holding your breath for a year and finally exhaled. She wasn't wrong. 3 months after the breakup, Margaret called me into her office. Close the door, she said, and my stomach dropped. That tone usually meant bad news. But Margaret was smiling. The partnership committee met yesterday. We'd like to offer you junior partner, effective immediately. I stared at her. I thought that wasn't happening until next year. It wasn't. But I made the case that your judgment under personal pressure, the way you handled the situation with Samuel, demonstrated exactly the kind of clear thinking and self-protection we value in partners. You didn't let emotion cloud your judgment. You documented everything, protected your assets, and handled the aftermath with professionalism. The committee agreed. Margaret, I don't know what to say. Say yes. And then get back to work. The Henderson commercial lease isn't going to negotiate itself. I said yes. That weekend Rachel and I booked a trip to Portugal. 3 weeks in September. We stayed in small coastal towns, ate seafood and drank wine, hiked along cliffs overlooking the Atlantic. For 3 weeks I didn't check my work email obsessively. Didn't think about Samuel. Just existed in the moment. This is who you're supposed to be, Rachel said one afternoon as we sat on a beach. Not the version who was constantly monitoring someone else's moods and schemes. I forgot what peace felt like. Don't forget again. When I got back to Denver, my condo felt even more like home. I'd missed it in a way I never had when Samuel was living there. Missed the quiet. Missed having space that was entirely my own. Then 6 months after canceling the wedding, something arrived that changed everything. A large envelope came to my office with Douglas's boutique return address. Inside was a note. Thought you should see this. And a card. The handwriting was careful, deliberate, like someone who didn't write by hand very often. The card had a simple design, just "thank you" on the front in elegant script. Inside the message read, Ms. Morgan, Mr. Douglas gave me your work address and said it would be okay to write to you. I'm James Patterson, the veteran who received the suit you donated. I wanted you to know what that gift meant to me. I got the corporate security job I interviewed for. The one I wore your suit to. I've been promoted twice in 6 months. I'm now managing security for an entire tech campus. But more than the job, that suit gave me something I'd lost. Confidence. Dignity. The feeling that I belonged in professional spaces again. I don't know what happened between you and whoever that suit was originally for, and it's not my business. But I want you to know that your generosity changed my life. I'm including a photo from my first day of work. I wanted you to see what your gift made possible. With deepest gratitude, James Patterson. The photo showed a man standing tall in front of a corporate building, wearing the charcoal Tom Ford suit with burgundy lining. The same suit Samuel had spent hours selecting, obsessing over every detail. But on James it looked different. It looked earned. He stood with his shoulders back, chin up, eyes clear. He looked like he belonged exactly where he was. I sat at my desk holding that card for a long time, feeling something shift in my chest. Not just satisfaction that the suit had gone to someone who deserved it, but genuine joy that something good had come from my worst judgment call. I framed the photo and hung it in my home office, right above my desk. During late nights reviewing contracts or preparing for difficult negotiations, I'd look up and see James Patterson standing proud in that suit, and remember that sometimes the best revenge is making sure something beautiful ends up in the right hands. 9 months after the breakup, I was having lunch with a client at a restaurant downtown when I saw him, Samuel, sitting at a table near the window with a woman I didn't recognize. She was attractive, professional-looking, laughing at something he'd said. And I watched him use the exact same gestures he'd used with me, leaning in attentively, touching her hand across the table, that smile that made you feel special. My first instinct was to leave immediately. Just pay the bill and go. But something stopped me. I watched them for a moment. Saw how she looked at him, the same way I probably had in those early months. Like he was genuinely interested in her as a person, not as an asset to acquire. When she got up to use the restroom, I did something impulsive. I followed her. She was washing her hands when I approached. This is going to sound completely insane, but are you dating Samuel Brennan? She turned, surprised but not hostile. Yes, for about 4 months now. Why? I was engaged to him until about 8 months ago. I'm not here to cause drama or interfere, but please, be very careful with your financial information. Don't let him pressure you into transferring assets or giving him access to your accounts. And if he ever gives you an ultimatum about proving your love through property transfer, please run. She stared at me. He told me you were a controlling ex who couldn't handle his ambition. I'm sure he did. I pulled out one of my business cards, wrote my cell number on the back. I'm just asking you to protect yourself. Trust your instincts if anything feels off. If you ever need to talk to someone who's been through it, call me.